All right, good afternoon, everyone. I'd like to call to order today's Thursday, April 7th, public meeting of the Missoula Board of County Commissioners. Welcome back in person. We have not been in this room in many, many months, maybe even close to a year. So you are part of an inaugural occasion, which hopefully we will stick with for the foreseeable future. So to begin with, Missoula County acknowledges that this event today takes place in the Aboriginal territories of the Salish and Kalispel people. Please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, I'm Commissioner Dave Strohmeyer. I'm joined by Commissioner Josh Slotnick. Commissioner Juanita Vero is not able to join us today. We have a number of public announcements by way of proclamations to read today. And the first will be on Sexual Assault Awareness Month and will be brought to us by Commissioner Slotnick.
Thanks, Dave. All right, I'm going to read this proclamation. Missoula County, the City of Missoula, the University of Montana, and the Associated Students of the University of Montana do hereby proclaim, whereas Sexual Assault Awareness Month, SAAM, calls attention to the fact that sexual violence is widespread and has public health and safety implications for the city and county of Missoula and beyond, and whereas rape, sexual assault, and sexual harassment harm our community, our friends, and our families. Studies show 1 in 5 women and 1 in 38 men have experienced completed or attempted rape. 1 in 4 girls and 1 in 13 boys experience child sexual abuse at some point before the age of 18. And on campus, 1 in 5 women, 1 in 16 men are sexually assaulted during their time in college. And whereas statistics can tell us how many people are harmed, but talking to a survivor reveals the true impact of this violence, loss of safety and trust, and sometimes even the loss of hope. And whereas the goal of SAAM is more than awareness, the ultimate goal is prevention of sexual harassment, abuse, and assault. And prevention means stopping sexual violence before it happens by changing norms that allow it to exist in the first place, ranging from attitudes, values, and behaviors to laws, institutions, and social norms. And whereas we ask our community to join us in the Building Safer Spaces, Reclaiming Our Right to Safety campaign and champion the power of asking and receiving consent. Prevention is everyone's job. All of us can help create safe environments. We can intervene to stop behavior, promote healthy attitudes and relationships, believe survivors, and connect them to resources. And whereas we strongly support the efforts of national, state, and local sexual assault prevention and response programs in their efforts to create safe and healthy communities. Now, therefore, we, John Engen, Mayor of the City of Missoula, Josh Slotnick, Juanita Vero, and Dave Strohmeyer, Missoula County Commissioners, Seth Bodner, President of the University of Montana, and Noah Darnell, President of the Associated Students of the University of Montana, do hereby join the Student Advocacy Resource Center at the University of Montana, the YWCA Missoula, Project Beacon of All Nations Health Center, First Step at Providence St. Patrick's Hospital, the Make Your Move project of the Missoula City County Health Department, the Crime Advocacy Division of the Missoula County Community Justice Department, and communities across the country in playing an active role to prevent sexual violence. Along with the United States government and the state of Montana, we do hereby proclaim April 2022 as Sexual Assault Awareness Month in the City of Missoula and Missoula County.
Thanks, Josh. Is there anyone who would like to speak to this proclamation? Okay. A second proclamation, and that last one's an important one, so thanks, Josh. The next one, whereas Title VII of the Civil Rights Act, commonly known as the Federal Fair Housing Act, which guarantees fair housing for all residents of the United States, was signed into law in April 1968. And whereas the month of April is nationally recognized as Fair Housing Month and a time to reflect on and reaffirm our national commitment to the ideal that fair housing opportunity is available to everyone in the United States without regard to race, color, religion, national origin, sex, familial status, and disability. And whereas Missoula County recognizes that all residents are free to purchase, rent, finance, and insure their homes without regard to their sex, marital status, race, creed, religion, color, age, familial status, physical or mental disability, or national origin. And whereas Missoula County welcomes this opportunity to celebrate the 54th anniversary of the adoption of the Fair Housing Act and to reaffirm our commitment to the principle of fair housing for all by strengthening efforts that address discrimination in our communities, supporting programs that will educate the public concerning their rights to equal housing opportunity, and assuring every person their right to live free of the fear of housing discrimination. Now, therefore, we, Juanita Vero, Dave Strohmeyer, and Josh Slotnick, Missoula County Commissioners in Montana, do hereby proclaim the month of April 2022 as Fair Housing Month.
Thanks, Dave. And our last one, often we have no proclamations. Today we are rich in proclamations. We have three. The final one, this comes from Missoula County around public safety. Whereas public safety was the first service provided by a government to its citizens, and the safety and well-being of its citizens and emergency first responders continues to be one of the foremost concerns of Missoula County. And whereas ensuring public safety and well-being requires the ability to receive calls for help and immediately send responders to provide that help, and whereas 911 is the critical first link in the chain in delivering public safety services, and whereas the public safety telecommunicators who work in 911 display a superior level of commitment, dedication, and professionalism in accomplishing their mission of receiving calls for help from citizens, dispatching emergency response agencies, and maintaining a communication link with the responders to ensure their safety. And whereas these same public safety telecommunicators provide this service to the public and first responders 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, working extraordinarily long hours with difficult schedules. And whereas the vital role of the public safety telecommunicator is often unknown and not recognized. And now, therefore, we, the Missoula Board of County Commissioners, recognize the week of April 10th to April 16th as National Public Safety Telecommunications Week. We thank the telecommunicators in 911 for all their efforts and hard work under very difficult circumstances. The community truly would not be safe without them. We also encourage the community to recognize the importance of the function of 911 and to thank these dedicated individuals in writing. And that comes to you from the Board of County Commissioners, Juanita Vero, Josh Slotnick, and Dave Strohmeyer.
Thank you, Josh. Any comment on any of those proclamations?
Hi, this is Jess. I work over at the Student Advocacy Resource Center at the University of Montana, and I just, going back to the proclamation of the Sexual Assault Awareness Month, I just want to thank you on behalf of this department for joining us in this very important first step for creating a culture of respect. Appreciate it. Thank you.
You bet. Thank you. Any other public comment or comment in general? Commissioner
One small comment. This is not planned. I just noticed this in moments before this meeting. I saw our staff literally running across the street to pull this together. And as you pointed out, we haven't done this in a year. And I just want to point out the hard work of the staff and thank them for pulling this together. It's one thing to do a public meeting. It's one thing to do an online meeting. It's a whole other thing to do them both simultaneously in this room. So I really want to say thanks to Violet and Emmy and Sarah and other folks in our communications world to pulling this off. Good work and thank you.
Yeah, thank you. There's a lot that goes into these meetings to pull them off as seamlessly as they are. So thank you. Speaking of this meeting, Violet, are there any housekeeping items that you'd like to mention for folks today, especially because this is a hybrid meeting, which is something we have not done in a very long time?
Sure. Just really quickly, for folks that are calling in online on Microsoft Teams, we just ask that you keep your cameras off until you're ready to speak because we'll be recording this meeting. And if your camera is on, you will appear in the duration of the recording. Also, please keep your mics muted until you're ready to speak. And if you're calling in on the phone, if you want to give comment, you will have to hit *6 when the time comes to unmute yourself. I think that's all.
Okay, thank you, Violet. So next on the agenda is the opportunity for public comment on any items that are not otherwise on the agenda. And for folks who have not seen the agenda, there are 7 public hearings today. If you're here for one of those 7 exciting public hearings, please hold your comments for that item at that point if your comments pertain to that item. Otherwise, this is your opportunity to come on up and tell us what's on your mind about anything else, hopefully within the jurisdiction of the Board of County Commissioners. And please try to be as succinct as possible. Keep your comments to 3 minutes or less, since we've got a ton of work to do today. And when you come on up to the mic, please turn it on. And if it's not on already, there should be a green light. State your name for the record and share with us what is on your mind.
We'll go this way. You come get sorted out here. Commissioner Strohmeyer, Commissioner Slotnick, my name is Shane Coleman. This is my wife, Becky Coleman. This is our daughter, Jewel Coleman. We have 2 other children. We live at 2970 Sandalwood Court, out by the Kona Fishing Access. Today, the neighbors living on Sandalwood Court and Kona Ranch Road respectfully present to you this petition signed by the residents living on those streets and ask the Missoula Commissioners to change the speed limit on Kona Ranch Road from the east approach to the Kona Bridge to its junction at Big Flat Road from 45 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour. The neighbors also respectfully request that a no passing zone be established on that same section of Kona Ranch Road. The petition signers also asked the Missoula County Commissioners to hold a hearing on our petition as a means to allow residents who signed the petition a chance to present their case in the speed limit and establish no passing zone. We understand the commissioners are also dealing with many issues that have significant impact on Missoula County as a whole. And we just request that we have the opportunity to present this to you on a more formal stage. Go ahead, you can go on that to him, buddy.
Thank you.
This is our petition. Thank you for accepting it. And that's all we have.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you so much for that. Willis, were you wanting to speak to this also or nope? Okay. Cat's got your tongue today. Okay. Thanks so much for the petition. Willis gave us a heads up this was coming, so we'll talk amongst ourselves and try to figure out a time, whether it's in a public meeting setting like this or in one of our public works meetings to talk about this and let you know that that's happening. So whoever wants to show up can. So yeah, thank you so much. We really appreciate it. Any other public comment on items not on today's agenda? Anyone online or on the phone who would like to comment on anything not on today's agenda? If you're online, please use the raise hand function and we'll call on you in the order in which you raise your hand. Okay. Moving on, our current claims list. This would be claims received as of March 15, 2022 through March 24th, 2022 by the Commissioner's Office, total $1,456,936.93. I haven't had a chance to mention this to folks for a while, but if you're interested in what that dollar amount is composed of, go to the electronic version of today's agenda. You can click on that dollar amount and drill down into what all of those claims are. As I mentioned earlier, we have 7 public hearings today. The way we will work this with each of these public hearings, for those of you who have not participated in one of our meetings previously, is we'll begin with a staff report. If the item is appropriate to this, we will then follow with a statement or comments or a presentation by the applicant or the applicant's representative. We'll take public comment, close the public hearing, and then we'll have questions from the commission and an opportunity for the commission to discuss the item, make a motion, and vote on that particular item. And the first public hearing, which I will open, is on a proposed resolution related to TDS Metrocom cable, and this would be a cable franchise. And we have a staff report from our county CAO, Chris Lonsberry.
Good afternoon. Thank you, commissioners. So what you have before you today is a resolution which would allow us to begin negotiations with TDS Metro for a cable franchise in Missoula County. A little bit of background: about approximately 2 years ago, Missoula County entered into its first franchise agreement, which was with Charter Spectrum Communications. We used a very similar process to this, the first piece being a resolution for us to open negotiations, at which point our legal counsel and your staff will begin negotiations. This pertains primarily to cable television, although they do provide internet service as well. But the franchise has to do with the cable television component of that business. And what that allows us to do is negotiate for things like the public access programming brought to us by MCAT in this case, which is recording this meeting and also broadcast your meetings, as well as a fee for the use of public right-of-way in order to be able to install cable to connect homes. So this, again, is just the first step of that process. This resolution would allow staff and legal counsel to begin those negotiations. And then after those negotiations are completed, a contract would come to you for the actual cable franchise. So this is just the first step of a multi-step process. And for those who are unaware, TDS Metrocom is now providing service in the Billings and Bozeman area of the state of Montana, having branched out from its beginnings in the Midwest.
Very good. Yeah, go ahead. Ask a question.
Thanks, Abe. So Chris, if I understand it right, these franchise agreements do generate some revenue for the county, which then we can use to offset property taxes if we so chose.
They do generate some revenue. I will say they generate approximately, I think the cable franchise that we currently have generates about $75,000 to $100,000 per year. So it's a small amount of money, but it can be used to offset property taxes. The county has used that funding in the past to fund, for example, the technology in this room, the Sophie Moise room, which allows us to have MCAT broadcast the meetings, as well as for us to have Teams so that we can do hybrid meetings in this facility, which of course were very beneficial during the pandemic.
Great, thanks.
All right. Is there any public comment on the proposed resolution? Any public comment? Anyone online? Okay, we will close the public hearing. Any additional questions from the commission or a motion?
I would make a motion. I would request the board approve and sign a resolution approving the application for a cable franchise with TDS Metrocom LLC.
I will second that. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, Chris.
Thank you, commissioners.
We always look forward to those multi-step processes. It wouldn't be worth doing unless it was a multi-step one. Okay. Our second public hearing, which I'll open, is on a resolution of intention to create a rural special improvement district. And Deputy County Attorney John Hart, would you like to introduce this for us?
I would, and I'm grateful, Commissioner Strohmeyer, that you foreshadowed the exciting nature of the action items on the agenda today, because this one is exciting. I know I always say that when I'm presenting, and you're probably thinking, does Hart really think that all of his projects are exciting? Yes, he does, but this one is truly exciting. This is, at least in terms of my tenure with Missoula County, which is only 7 years, it's the first rural special improvement district that we have created. And I think it's probably the first one that we've anticipated creating in close to 20 years. And so it was, I'll give you a little background. It was several years ago where, along with CAO Vicki Zier and the Public Works Department, and even some of the planning department, we're talking about ways to help residents improve their roads and do road maintenance. We decided that we would initiate a process. I mean, it's always been available in Montana law, but we would actively set up a program whereby citizens, in appropriate circumstances, could create an RSID for either road improvements, road maintenance, or both. And so we, plagiarizing heavily from Yellowstone County and Gallatin County, put together a form petition that we could give to citizens when they wanted some of these services and were willing to pay some or all of the part of it. We have provided that petition form to several neighborhood groups, locales, and, it requires a lot of work. You got to go out and you got to use some shoe leather, going door to your neighbors. You got to pitch a plan to them. You got to tell them this is what we should do, and we want you to be on board. But it's going to cost you a little bit of assessment on your property taxes, and so that's a big deterrent. And we've offered this to several groups, and today we have a group of homeowners for the first time who followed through, have done the hard work, have petitioned Missoula County to have some road improvements on 29th Avenue and North Avenue West. And what they want to do, this is a dirt road in the, I guess you'd call it the target range area. And so it's within the air stagnation zone of Missoula County. Paving this road is not only a benefit to everybody that we share the airshed with, but of particular importance to the neighbors on 29th and North. And there's 13 property owners, and they want to pave their road, and they want to put in some drainage features and other things that will, make it a better road for them, but also make things better for Missoula County. And they presented a petition to Missoula County, and what I have done and I have in front of you today is the first step. Again, this is one of these multi-step projects. I apologize for that, although you guys like multi-step projects.
We love them.
So we're on step one to create an RSID for these neighbors. And under the law, the first thing you do is you adopt a resolution of intention to create the district. And that's what's in front of you today. And by law, that resolution must designate the number of the district. And I have exciting news. Just yesterday, Michelle Denman gave me the number of this proposed district. It's 8505. So numbers are always fun, and I'm happy to bring that number to you today. The second thing the resolution must have, it's got to describe the boundaries of the district. And Exhibit A to this resolution shows the individual parcels along 29th and North that are part of this district. And they're also a legal description on Exhibit B. The third thing the resolution has to have is it must state the general character of the improvements that are to be made. And again, these are going to be designing, engineering, constructing paved roadways on portions of 29th and North. And then you've got to state well, the name of the engineer who's going to be in charge of the work, and that is our own Missoula County Public Works Department. They are going to provide the labor and the equipment, and the homeowners, the property owners are going to pay the out-of-pocket costs for construction materials and what have you there. So the engineer is the County Public Works Department. Unless you have any questions for me, well, oh no, let me finish up. So if you adopt this resolution today, commissioners, you will then, the clerk and recorder will send a copy of this resolution mailed to each one of the individuals designated to be part of the district. The resolution will be, there will be notice of the resolution published in the Missoulian on April 17th and April 24th. And then this resolution sets a second meeting, same day, Thursday, May 26th at 2 p.m. And the purpose of that meeting is for you to hear any written protests that any proposed property owner will provide on or before May 20th. And if there aren't any protests, then the district can move forward. Even if there are protests, you can move forward with the district. The only thing that would be fatal to the district is if more than 50% of the property owners protest creation of the district. Then by law, you'd be prohibited from moving forward. But that's essentially you know, it's a long resolution, but that's what this resolution of intention will accomplish, and that's what I have before you. I drafted it. I vetted it with some folks who know far more than me, and we got it right. It was a little more complicated because these neighbors are proposing to finance the costs of the road improvements over 10 years. And so we're going to use our RSID fund to secure that, but then we're going to also issue bonds, public bonds to receive the money in this next fiscal year so we can do the work. That made it a little bit more complicated. Honestly, I didn't appreciate how complicated that was. And that's one of the reasons that this took longer than anybody wanted it to take. But that's all memorialized in this resolution too.
Okay, thank you. And for those who came in late, we are on the second public hearing today. This is a resolution of intention to create rural special improvement district 8505, which is along 29th Avenue and North Avenue West. And why don't we begin with, if there's anyone, is there anyone in the room who's a proponent or a petitioner as part of this? Come on up. And please state your name for the record and tell us what's on your mind.
I'm Nancy Eiler. I'm currently the chairperson for the ad hoc committee for this RSID petition. And I don't want to repeat anything that John Hart went over, but I just want to say that we're very grateful to have this possibility. And we want to thank John Hart, pardon the expression, for having worked his heart out for us and from the bottom of our hearts to be able to make this possible. And also the wonderful guys at the Public Works Department, Shane Stack, Eric Dixon, and Nate Geese, who have all worked their hearts out to get this to happen. And it's going to be really helpful for us in terms of dust control. Our dirt road, of course, falls apart annually with car swallowing potholes. It's going to be a wonderful thing for us to be able to do this. And the financing piece, I understand, was really laid quite a chunk of work on John Hart's desk. But we're not overall an affluent neighborhood. And I think without that, we would not have been able to do it. So it's super, super wonderful. The whole thing, we're just very grateful to be able to do this.
Thank you very much. Are there any petitioners online who would like to speak to this? Or anyone else, either online or in the room, who would like to speak to this item? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Questions or comments?
Just a comment. So, oh, man, almost 3 years ago, one of the residents in this neighborhood reached out to me because of the state of their road. And I called Shane Stack and he said, oh, it's not a county road. It's not ours to deal with. And I said to Shane, well, what do we do? He said, you know, there's this option. Hasn't been done that citizens have come forward to create this. And as long as I know about, and as John pointed out, possibly not in this century. So these folks are not just getting their road paved. You are paving the way. And we really appreciate your patience and all the work that John did and Shane and Eric, et cetera. So the next group of folks who do this in their neighborhood, it won't take quite as long. And the financing piece of it is super complicated. And unfortunately, in this situation, it's what was required. It wasn't, well, we need a little bit of money for maintenance every year. It's no, we need kind of major road reconstruction, which is, you know, costs a pretty penny. So this is long-winded of me just saying thank you for hanging in there. And that because of your work, you helped create a mechanism that other folks can use. And I'm almost certain will use, given that we are pretty much up against our mill cap and now we don't have a gas tax to do sort of new stuff with roads. It's almost like that road is at a cul-de-sac. So thanks for helping create a new mechanism and thanks for doing the work, John. And with that, I'm happy to make a motion if you are ready to receive one.
Please do.
All right, I would request the board approve and sign a resolution relating to Rural Special Improvement District number 8505, declaring it to be the intention of the Board of County Commissioners to create the district for the purpose of undertaking certain local improvements and financing the cost thereof, and incidental thereto, through the issuance of Rural Special Improvement District bonds secured by the county's Rural Special Improvement District Revolving Fund.
I will second that, and I will just put an exclamation point on everything that Commissioner Slotnick said earlier. Thanks for leading the way on this, those who are the petitioners, and we look forward to moving this through yet another multi-step process. So any further discussion? Okay, seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay,
Thank
thank you very much. Thank you, John Hart. Thank you, Public Works.
Thank you, Commissioners.
Our third public hearing today is the proposed Budge family transfer, and this will begin with a staff report by our very own Matt Heimel.
Good afternoon, Commissioners. Matt Heimel here with Community and Planning Services. I'll be presenting these family transfers. I have a few brief PowerPoints to show, which I'll get loaded up on the screen here in just a moment. Okay. Almost there. There we go. So Commissioners, this is a request from William Budge to utilize the family transfer exemption to create and transfer one parcel to an immediate family member as presented in the subdivision exemption affidavit. As stated, the claimant is William Budge, represented by Montana Northwest Company. And I have a very broad aerial image on the screen here showing the lower 9 Mile Valley. So the property highlighted in this fine green and black hashed line in the upper left-hand corner of the screen is located at 32875 Piney Meadows Lane. It's adjacent to 9 Mile Creek, about 6 miles northwest of Highway 10 West. And here is a closer aerial image showing the property as it is, oh, there's a bit of a delay. The property as it is currently developed with a single-family residence, a few accessory structures with a direct driveway off Piney Meadows Road. You can see about 490 feet of 9 Mile Creek running through the property, which I will speak to in a few moments. So the overall proposal is to use the family transfer exemption to divide the 10.18 acre subject property into two about 5 acre tracts. And those would be one of the tracts, the northern vacant portion, would be conveyed to the claimant's adult son, and the claimant would retain ownership of and continue to reside on the section of the property with a existing house. As I said, 9 Mile Creek runs through the property and is delineated as Zone A approximate 100-year floodplain. The applicant did prepare an engineered flood study regarding the floodplain. That study was received by Missoula County and hence forwarded to the Montana Department of Natural Resources and Conservation, the DNRC. DNRC concurred with the flood study and stated that its conclusions appear reasonable. So here is a slide showing existing conditions. The base flood elevation per that study is shown on the middle of the image with a faint blue line. And that approximate flood elevation per the study shows the existing residence and garage as being outside of the floodplain. And so this ultimately demonstrates that the flood hazard evasion criteria is not triggered for this family transfer. And here's the slide showing proposed conditions for the family transfer. You can see the northern vacant portion that would go to the claimant's son. So the Missoula County Growth Policy, as updated with the 2002 Regional Land Use Guide, designates the property with a rural, residential, low-density land use. And that recommends a density of about 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres. This family transfer would exceed that recommended density with 1 dwelling per about 5 acres. Adjacent properties that are also along 9 Mile Creek are developed at about 1 unit per 10 acres. Across the street, properties that are not encumbered by floodplain are developed at about 1 dwelling per 3 to 4 acres. So although it's not strictly in compliance with that density, it's not completely out of character for the area. One comment I would like to note that we've received came from the Missoula Conservation District. The Conservation District had some concerns about implementing the 310 permitting program and stressed the importance of not disturbing the riparian area and how 310 permits will be required for any disturbances in that area. So that is a broad overview of the request. I can move on to our questions for the family transfer applicant. If the claimant or the representative could please state their name for the record.
William Budge. That's me.
Okay, thank you. I have 5 questions for you. 1, did you buy the property with the intent of dividing it?
Nope.
Thank you. Do you or your transferees intend to transfer the property within the next year?
Nope.
Thank you. Have you talked to anyone at the county about going through subdivision review?
Nope.
Thank you. 4, will the property be developed?
There may be, my son will build a house on it eventually outside the floodplain.
Okay, thank you. And 5, will the recipient of the property be residing on the property?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. So the overall question for family transfer exemption is it an evasion of the Subdivision and Platting Act? And our subdivision regulations establish rebuttable presumptions and general evasion criteria. In staff's review of this request, none of the family transfer rebuttable presumptions, were triggered. 2 general evasion criteria were triggered. However, overall staff concluded there did not appear to be evasion and is recommending approval of this request.
Thank you, Matt. Mr. Budge, is there anything else that you'd like to add?
No, I'm just happy that my son cares to live nearby me. So, you know, that's one of the reasons for dividing the property. I'm 81 and having a little bit of difficulty taking care of stuff.
Thank you. Yes, it is always good to have children who are willing to reside by you. That's yet to be determined with my kids. So,
Yeah.
Is there any other public comment on this proposed family transfer? Any comment from anyone in the room or virtually? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Questions?
I don't have any questions, but I am ready with a motion if you're.
Let's
ready
do
for
it.
one. Okay, I would request the board approve the application by William Budge to utilize the family transfer exemption MCA 76-3-2071B to create and transfer 1 parcel to an immediate family member as presented in the subdivision exemption affidavit.
That is in order. I will second that motion. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thank you, Mr. Budge.
Thank you.
Thank you much.
All right, you bet. Our 4th public hearing is on the Smith family transfer. Matt.
Hello again, Commissioners. Matt Heimel here with Community Planning Services. Just a brief moment and I'll load up a quick presentation.
Sure.
Slight lag I'll have to get used to. Okay, Commissioners, so this is a request from Richard and Edith Smith to use 2 exemptions to the Montana Subdivision and Platting Act. First exemption is an aggregation to aggregate and then formally expunge a line. And the second, to utilize the family transfer exemption to create and transfer 2 parcels to immediate family members as presented in the subdivision exemption affidavit. On the screen is a broad aerial image showing the vicinity of Lower Patty Canyon, southeast of the city of Missoula. The property outlined in greenish is located at the intersection of Birding Tree Drive and Patty Canyon Road. It is on the south side of Patty Creek, about 2 miles southeast of South Higgins Avenue. Oh, wrong arrow there. So here is a closer aerial image showing the property. It is currently vacant. Birding Tree Drive traverses the northwest portion of the property with Patty Creek on the northern edge. Note that the claimant owns and resides on the property located with the mouse cursor. So the first proposal, as I said, is to aggregate a boundary line. That line is not valid for use with the boundary line relocation exemption. However, aggregation of that line into the subject property would be required for eligibility to meet family transfer and survey recording requirements. Aggregation of that line by filing a certificate of survey would formally reflect its expungement from the survey record. The second and primary proposal is to utilize a family transfer exemption. Now, it'll come up on the screen in a moment, I promise, to utilize a family transfer exemption to divide the 13.37 acre subject property into two about 6.7 acre tracts for conveyance to the claimant's two adult daughters. And the claimant, as I said, would not retain ownership of the property, but they live adjacent to the southeast. So the adult daughters would each receive a tract, and the application states both tracts are proposed for single-family residential use. The property is described in the 2019 Missoula Area Land Use Element Amendment to the 2016 Growth Policy, and the land use designation here is rural residential and agriculture. Residential density is recommended to be one dwelling unit on approximately 2 to 10 acres, depending on site factors. The proposed transfer would be in line with that recommendation at about one dwelling unit per 6.7 acres. The property is also zoned. It is within Zoning District 4. And Zoning District 4 has some specific design requirements for slope, grading, wildfire hazard standards, of which this property is within a wildfire hazard area. And I'd like to focus for a moment on the slope standards in Zoning District 4. So as shown on the slide, subdivision exemptions are not reviewed for zoning compliance, but whether a proposal might violate zoning is one of the criterion to determine whether it is an evasion of subdivision review. So in this application, we received a slope exhibit because Zoning District 4 has some specific requirements for building sites on all lots to be on an area under 25% slope. So while this does not identify a specific building site, nor would a building site be approved through this exemption, this exhibit does demonstrate that there are areas on the property under 25% slope where construction could occur. So for one of the evasion criteria, this is satisfy that a violation of zoning would not be triggered, and it also complies with the growth policy. One comment I would like to also note was received by the Water Quality District, and the district emphasizes an importance of placing buildings and infrastructure as far from possible from the riparian area of Patty Creek. It is not designated floodplain, however, it is a riparian area, and the Water Quality District recommends construction away from there. So with that, I can ask questions for the family transfer claimant. They could please state their name for the record.
Richard and Edie Smith.
Thank you. I have 5 questions for you. 1, did you buy the property with the intent of dividing it?
No, we didn't.
Thank you. Do you or your transferees intend to transfer the property within the next year?
No.
Thank you. Have you talked to anyone at the county about going through subdivision review?
No, we haven't.
Will the property be developed?
Yes, eventually it will be by my 2 daughters.
And will the recipients of the property be residing on the property?
That's the intention, yes.
Thank you. So, commissioners, with that, family transfers are reviewed for whether they evade subdivision. With that, in our review, we did find that 3 rebuttable presumptions for family transfers were triggered in our review and 1 evasion criteria. I should note that there are no rebuttable presumptions for aggregations as well. Overall, staff concluded that there did not appear to be an attempt to evade subdivision review and is recommending approval.
Thank you, Matt. Would the claimant or the claimant's representative like to make any additional comments?
No, thanks, Matt. Thank you, commissioners.
Okay, thank you. Is there any public comment on this proposed family transfer? Either in the room here at the courthouse or online? Okay, seeing none, I'll close the public hearing. Questions?
I don't have any questions. I appreciate the presentation and I'm ready to toss a motion your way.
Let's toss it.
Okay.
Oh, and there it is on the screen even.
Nice. I would move to approve the family transfer exemption request by Richard and Edith Smith as presented in the subdivision exemption affidavit.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. All right.
I do have one question.
Yes.
Post this. I'm wondering in the race to who does the most family transfers between Nick and Matt, how are we going? What's the, are you
It's deadlocked.
it's deadlocked?
Okay.
Yeah, yeah.
It is family transfer season. Okay, thanks, Mr. and Mrs. Smith. Moving on to our 5th public hearing today. Miller Creek Lots Subdivision. Whenever you're ready, Nick.
Alrighty, thank you, commissioners. Just pull up my notes and we're going here. So this is a proposal for a 4-lot minor subdivision in the Miller Creek area. I'm going to start with the background first on the project. So the proposed project site is approximately 4 miles from Miller Creek's road, from Miller Creek Road's intersection with Highway 93. You can see the subject property kind of in the center of the screen here, highlighted in black and green. The property is 20.92 acres in size, and it sits on the flanks of Mount Dean Stone. The property currently has 1 home on it and 1 detached garage structure. It is currently zoned CA3, and it is designated as rural, residential, and agriculture by the 2019 land use element. The applicants are proposing 4 residential lots on the property. Lot sizes are proposed to range from 13.9 acres to 2.65 acres in size. All slopes over 25 degrees are proposed as platted no-build zones. All homes are proposed to have on-site well and septics, and overall density is proposed at 1 dwelling per 5.23 acres. Now looking at zoning and growth policy compliance, the CA3 zoning district requires 1 dwelling per 5 acres. The proposed density at 1 dwelling per 5.23 acres does meet this requirement. Proposed lots 2, 3, and 4 do not meet the CA3 length to width ratio requirement. However, the applicant received a variance approval from the Board of Adjustment in November of 2021 to waive this requirement for lots 2, 3, and 4. The project has also demonstrated compliance with the CA3 setbacks, and the proposed single-family use is a permitted use within the CA3 district. Now looking at growth policy compliance, the rural, residential, and ag designation recommends a density of 1 dwelling per 10 acres to 1 dwelling per 2 acres. The application does fit within this recommended density range. The application also does meet objective 8.3 of the growth policy, which is meant to direct development to areas that have the least amount of impact on natural resources. Now looking at impacts to local services, like I said, all lots are proposed to have on-site well and septics for water and sanitation. Primary access to the subdivision will be from individual approaches off of Miller Creek Road. There is an existing loop driveway that accesses lots 1 and 2. This will be decommissioned to serve the lots individually. Being a minor subdivision, there is no parkland requirement and no requirement for pedestrian infrastructure as well. Then it is located within Missoula Rural Fire District and is serviced by the Missoula County Sheriff's Office. Project was sent out for agency comment to applicable Missoula County agencies and as well as adjacent property owners. We received 2 comments from agencies. The first is from the Health Department, which commented that the project would require sanitation review or citation of an applicable exemption. Five Valleys Audubon also commented that regarding bird habitat, they have minimal concerns with the project. We did receive 2 letters from adjacent property owners to summarize their concerns. Their concerns over the existing wells being contaminated by septic systems from the new lots. Also concerns over draining the local aquifer and experiencing a reduction in static well depth. Then there's also concerns regarding the overall density of the subdivision and how that fits into the character of the neighborhood. Last, I just wanted to highlight a few important conditions of approval that staff is recommending. Condition 2 relates to removing an existing garage located on the lot line between proposed lots 1 and 2, and we are recommending that this be moved prior to final plat approval. Condition 6 requires the slopes greater than 25 degrees be labeled as no build zones on the face of the plat, and condition 7 is a fire sprinkler requirement for each new home within the subdivision. And in conclusion, staff is recommending approval, and there are 12 conditions in total.
Thank you, Nick. Would the applicant or applicant's representative like to present anything? Mr. Ewert, you're muted.
This first time.
Ron, you're still talking, but you're muted.
Can you hear me now?
All right. It's all yours.
Hi, I'm Ron Ewert with PCI, and here is with me is Dave Hotchkiss. He's the owner of the property. And I just want to say thanks to Nick and his work on this. You know, I've read through the entire staff report. Looks fair, reasonable. There is one thing that we want to talk about, and that is condition number 2. And it's kind of there's some personal reasons behind it. And Dave would like to address condition number 2.
Hello, everybody. I do have family that lives in the house, the existing house on lot 1, and they currently are using the detached garage for storage and whatnot. So I was hoping we could leave the structure until a possible building permit was pulled for either lots 2 or 3. And that's the 2 lots that share that property line. So I don't know if it's.
Yeah, the staff report says 1 and 2. I think he meant 2 and 3.
Yeah.
And so it's just a lot line, obviously. You know, if he does come in for a building permit for either lot 2 or 3, then at that time he would remove the garage, just to reiterate. Because it's not harming anything now, and his brother's keeping a lot of his work equipment and things in there, and it's kind of important to him. It's not hurting anything remaining.
Thanks, Ron. Nick, could you pull up or refresh our memories? What is condition 2, the removal of that structure prior to final plat approval?
Correct, yeah. And we chose final plat approvals as to not create any non-conforming structures once these lots get platted. I don't think it would give us complete heartburn to change it to the building permit, but I think it would be cleaner to stick with final plat. And it was indicated that it would be removed anyways in the application. So staff was trying not to impose anything that the applicants were already recommending. I think we were just recommending that it be done sooner than they were proposing.
Yeah.
Question, thanks. So question for you, Nick. So let's say we were to say, okay, great, you don't have to take the garage down until somebody pulls a building permit on lot 2 or 3. How's that enforced? How do we make sure that happens?
If it's in the conditions of approval, it should be uploaded to the permit at the time of permit review, so it should be checked. So there is some safeguards in place, and that what could also be in place at the time of final plat approval if it's referenced as final plat. So we could change the reference to reflect the time that we want it to be removed.
I mean, with those safeguards in place, I'm okay with it.
Okay, hold that thought. We'll come back to that. Anything else, Ron?
I don't have anything.
Okay.
I'm good.
All right. Is there any public comment on this proposed Miller Creek Lot subdivision? Anyone here in the courthouse or anyone online like to comment? Oh, I see a Roy Thomas online with your
Is my
hand up.
audio working?
It is.
Oh, good. I was one of the residents who sent in a letter of concern, and my concern is my well. I'm across the street, across the road from the proposed subdivision, and because of the no build zones, the plan is to put 3 new houses in pretty close proximity, which would be 3 septic systems pretty close together. And I've noticed, or I've realized since I've been here, I've lost probably 20, 25, perhaps up to 28 feet in my well. My water levels dropped. I know people that live up the road a little bit, their wells have gone dry in the past, but I'm no hydrologist or geologist, but it would seem the aquifer or the groundwater moves. My guess is in a southerly direction under the road. It'd be coming under the road on top of the bedrock and down towards the creek behind me. And if there was discharge from septic tanks in the groundwater, I would be very concerned that it would move along with the groundwater underneath the road and possibly contaminate my water system. And I don't have any alternative if I lose my well. And that's my concern.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Thomas. We'll come back to that in just a second. I'd like to maybe ask staff some questions related to that. Is there any other public comment from folks on the proposed subdivision? Okay, we'll close the public hearing. Nick, could you speak to that? This would be followed up by sanitation and subdivision review, would it not? So there will be a process by which sanitation issues are looked at, presumably.
Correct. The health department would make sure that the subdivision is compliant with the Sanitation and Platting Act prior to final plat approval, and there would also be a requirement for well and septic permits to be applied for and issued prior to installation of well and septics on the proposed lots.
So, and maybe you're not in the greatest position to answer this, but and certainly, Ron, if you want to speak to it also, that would be fine. But first to you, Nick, as far as what's examined during the issuance of a permit for a well, are they looking at how that proposed well will impact other water users in the vicinity?
Yes, and I'll speak very broadly because I don't know like a very deep knowledge on it, but there are proposed well isolation zones that do need to be indicated upon not only our submittal for subdivision, but upon the actual submittal for the well and permit itself. Those did show to be off-site from any adjacent property owners. So as far as the review of that would be taken into account.
And during the sanitation and subdivision review process, is there an opportunity for public comment and input then?
I don't believe there is, but I'm not positive on that.
Oh, Bailey, you have something for us.
Was already on. So Bailey Minnick, Planner 3 with CAPS. So part of the sanitation and subdivision, the law or the statute that it comes out of state law, our public hearing is basically the DEQ review. That's why we're required with our application, they have to submit all of the DEQ information for sufficiency of our application, is because we are technically the public hearing for the DEQ process.
So in other words, any comment that's submitted, including Mr. Thomas's related to water or sanitation issues, will be part of the record for that subsequent process.
Yes, but I don't believe there's an additional, like they don't mail notices or anything like that to the neighbors.
Okay, Thank you. Ron, did you have anything you wanted to add? Then we'll go to Commissioner Slotnick here.
Well, just sort of in general, so the groundwater, I don't think it's moving south. It's probably more of a southwest flow. It's, you know, it follows mainly toward the west. There are well isolation zones. There are mixing zones that cannot cross into a well isolation zone. We're using advanced systems, you know, good technology for the drain fields. There's quite a bit of work that goes in, calculations and discussions with DEQ. There's a lot of back and forth. It's quite a tedious process to get DEQ approval, almost as much as getting CAP's recommendation.
Okay.
A lot of work.
Thank you, Ron. Josh.
Thanks. So I just wanted to say, this is a scientific and technical engineering sort of matter, not simply around land use and development, which is why it is not up to us. So as Ron is noting, there is a gamble here to be had on the part of Ron and Mr. Hotchkiss. Just because we say, yep, you got it, you can subdivide here, make 3 lots or 4 lots, go for it, good luck. That does not mean perk test is going to happen. It doesn't mean the DEQ is going to say yes to your well. That's on you guys in engineering, and our approving this is no way a guarantee that, and I'll say this to Mr. Thomas, that the water and sanitation piece of this are going to fly. Those are entirely engineering, geotechnical, hydrological considerations that we have scientists and regulators work on. So for Mr. Thomas, we say yes to this development. That does not mean the wells are going to work. That's up to the DEQ, and septic is up to our health department. So, and if they say it's not going to work, it's not going to work. If they say it's going to work, I would feel okay that it's going to work. And if it doesn't, you would have all kinds of legal recourse.
Additional, I guess we've already had public comment. So other questions, Josh? Or
no, I'm good. I'm ready for a motion, and I appreciate Nick's good work. All right, I would move to approve the Miller Creek Lot subdivision based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law in the staff report and subject to the recommended. Oh, wait, shoot, I'm sorry. I want to make sure, sorry about that, Dave. The condition number 2, I would like to see, as the applicants would wish, that the garage does not have to be removed until a building permit is pulled on the adjacent lot.
So I think you could just say amended conditions of approval in the staff report.
And I apologize for goofing that up.
Nope.
I move to approve the Miller Creek Lot subdivision based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law in the staff report and subject to the amended conditions of approval in the staff report.
I'll second that. Is that clear enough, Nick?
What do you think?
Yeah.
Don, is that all right?
Okay. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And thank you, Mr. Thomas, and be assured your comments will be part of the record and forwarded on for the next process.
Thank you. I appreciate your time.
You bet. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it.
Thank you guys as well.
Thank you.
You bet. We're up to public hearing number 6 today. This would be the proposed Novelli Nook subdivision. Who does not like a proposal with the word Nick?
I know, I
Nook
thought
in it?
that was great marketing. It's just a nook.
For the record, Tim Worley with CAPS. I'm here to present Novelli Nook subdivision, which is a proposal by Adam Hertz, represented by Woith Engineering, for a 3-lot subdivision in East Missoula on 6,171 square feet. The proposal is to create a 2,675 square foot lot containing an existing single-family home, along with 2 1,748 square foot lots that will have a duplex unit. The location is in East Missoula. Here's that lot here. We have Highway 200 here just for reference, and this is Mount Jumbo School. Zooming in a little bit, you can see the lot with the home on the northwestern edge of the property dating, and the home dates back to about 1974, we believe. It has a garage off of Staple Street. It's actually addressed off Staple at 707 Staple. And here's an existing conditions map showing the single family home on the northern edge of the property. And the proposal is to create, again, 2 lots on the southern edge for the purpose of constructing a duplex. The growth policy land use designation is live, make neighborhood, which recommends in the residential arena a density range of 3 to 11 dwelling units per acre. Secondarily, what's recommended includes small scale manufacturing, fabrication, commercial kitchens, and artist studios. And again, what's planned with this subdivision is to add a duplex. The total density of this project ends up being in excess of 20 units per acre. So therefore, the project isn't growth policy compliant, strictly speaking. However, this location is unzoned. And we note that a subdivision can't be denied based solely on lack of compliance with the growth policy. The roads in question are Michigan Avenue along the southern edge of the project and Staple Street along the eastern edge. These are both county standard roadways. They're 24 feet wide. There's no proposal to alter these streets in any way. They meet county standard. Fire protection will be by a single fire hydrant about 150 feet north of the subject property. A water and sewer connection has been approved for this project by the city, specifically for this duplex concept. And there's just, I believe, 5 conditions of approval, which include typical plat notes, including an RSID waiver to be placed on the face of the plat, and also review of grading, drainage, and erosion control. Commissioners, we support this subdivision, and there is your recommended motion.
Thank you, Tim. Would the applicant or applicant's representative like to speak to this?
Thank you, Commissioners. I'm Matt Hammerstein. I'm with Voith Engineering. We're representing Adam Hertz on this project, and I think I'm more here to answer questions. Want to thank Tim. He does a very thorough job on all those presentations, so
Okay.
he about covered it.
Okay, thank you very much. Is there any public comment on this proposed subdivision? Either here in the courthouse, in the Sophie Moise room, or anyone online? Any online callers? Okay, seeing none, we'll close the public hearing. Questions?
I don't have any real questions,
comment.
just comments on good job on using available space and hooking up to sewer that's already there, and looks like building something that isn't going to be super big. Hopefully it will be affordable. And I know that's a lot out of your guys' control given the costs are today, but keeping it small is great. Making use of space that exists is great. So glad to see this happen.
Okay. I have nothing to add. How about a motion?
I would move to approve the Novelli Nook subdivision based on the findings of fact and conclusions of law in the staff report and subject to the recommended conditions of approval.
I'll second that. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Aye. Thank you, gentlemen.
Sorry you guys had to wait so long. So
you don't need to leave either. There's more to come.
So good.
Right. Our 7th and final public hearing today is on the proposed Lolo Flats buildings for lease or rent proposal. And Bailey.
Give me 1 second to get everything connected here. Oh my, go faster, go faster.
No, take your time. We're doing great.
The technology problem, right? With the multiple screens and everything. And work. Yes. Okay. Okay, commissioners, last one of the day. This is the Lolo Flats development. It's a buildings for lease or rent project. Make sure it goes perfect. So I was just going to start with a brief overview of what buildings for lease or rent actually is. We don't see them very much, or I should say we see one type of them consistently, but they are a set of standalone regulations. So they are separate from zoning regulations, separate from subdivision regulations. They are triggered only with unzoned property within the county. So if it's zoned, it doesn't apply. And it requires, there's certain thresholds within them for triggering this review. So residential or commercial development is triggered with 4 or more units and or structures for lease or rent on one tract of record. And then storage units that have more than 4 or more buildings or 30 or more units in a single building on a single tract of record. So generally the most we see are storage units is usually this. This is not a storage unit project though. And then there are review criteria specific within the buildings for lease or rent regulations. And I've listed those on the slide and I'll go through them all in my report. But these are the specific set of criteria that we would recommend approval or denial based on these specific, really 6 criteria that we have. Okay, so here is the property. It is, and again, I have a big picture of it. I don't know if, let me get my little laser pointer here. So this is the property here. It's east of Highway 93 near the intersection of Farm Lane and Lakeside Drive. So here's the 93 Highway 12 intersection. This is actually Lewis and Clark Drive. If you go out there, that's the road sign that's there. So we're in this area. And here's a zoomed in part of the property. Just for reference, so this is the church that's right there. This is the property that is going to be the new Lolo Elementary School, just for reference for people.
Bailey, what's on that what sort of structure is on that property?
I will get to that in just a second. Yes. So let's see, my site plan. Okay, so here, so the request is to build 23 residential units in 3 buildings. It's a 2.18 acre parcel. There will be 2 8-plex units and then 1 7-plex unit. So there is an existing 12-plex that is currently on the property, and that was constructed prior to the creation of the buildings for lease or rent regulations in 2013. So that's when anything prior to 2013 is exempt, basically, or not considered. It's not non-conforming, but so this is the existing right here. There is also an existing covered parking area that's on here as well. So that's what you were seeing on that picture. All of the proposed buildings will be connected to the Lolo Water and Sewer District, RSID 901. The existing 12-plex is currently served by an on-site well and septic system, but is also proposed to be connected to the Lolo Water and Sewer District as well. Access to the site is provided from an existing approach off of Farm Lane. It's actually this northern one here, or not really northern, it's sideways, sorry. It's really eastern side. That will become a looped 20-foot wide internal road within the development, and they're proposing an additional approach off of Farm Lane to the west. And then they are also proposing a 5-foot wide asphalt sidewalk within the proposed adjacent to the internal road. So starting with the first criteria, which is, we kind of combine them together on our staff report. So it's impacts to the physical environment and the human population in the area. So as I mentioned, it is accessed off a privately maintained internal road off of Farm Lane. There's no FEMA floodplain designation. It's inside of the air stagnation zone. So we do have a proposed condition that all driveways and parking areas would be paved. They did not submit a stormwater plan with the application, so we do have as a condition of approval that a grading and drainage plan would be reviewed and approved by Missoula Public Works prior to any land use approval, which is a building permit in this case. We also have a condition of approval that they create a weed management plan to be reviewed and approved by the Missoula County Weed District prior to any land use approval for just general upkeep of the area surrounding the buildings. We did have one comment from the Missoula Valley Water Quality District indicating there could be high groundwater in the area due to proximity of the Bitterroot River, and just noticing that there's potential for high groundwater and high runoff years, and to be considerate of basements and stormwater drainage calculations. Impacts for human population. We did notify the property owners within 300 feet of the project on March 14th, and I actually sent out a second notice on March 18th because the link that we had included in the first notice, it wasn't working for some reason. So we sent a secondary notice with an updated link due to those technical issues with the county's website. As I said, it's surrounded by existing residential uses, and it is an unzoned area, so there's no zoning in this area. The submitted site plan, as you can see here on the property, they are proposing a side setback and a rear setback, both of 20 feet, although no setbacks are required because it is unzoned, so they're actually voluntarily giving that setback there. We did have multiple comment letters that were received, and they were attached as part of my staff report. And then I did had one additional comment that I forwarded out to the BCC email, just for your information as well. Hopefully you guys got that. And just to the general concerns in the letters were the proposed location of the internal road in relation to the rear property line. So this area here, the location of snow storage, the overall density of the proposed development, which I'll get to in a second, the additional noise and traffic with the development, concerns regarding rentals, reducing adjacent property values, lack of privacy regarding two-story buildings, reduction of views due to two-story buildings, overflow parking concerns that could block emergency response vehicles, lack of security lighting, concern regarding adequate water supply in Lolo, and concern with traffic surrounding the new Lolo Elementary School directly across the street. So the growth policy compliance. So the property is designated as urban residential, 6 dwelling units per acre under the 2002 Lolo Regional Plan, which is an amendment to our 2016 growth policy. The designation of urban residential is intended for areas where public infrastructure and services are available and adequate to serve the site. The development guidelines within the urban residential designation state that development should incorporate infrastructure such as sidewalks, curb and gutter, street lights. Buildings should be located within setbacks or following prevailing pattern of adjacent property setbacks. Buildings should be oriented to the street, and that a range of building types is encouraged, including single-family detached, duplex, triplex, and multifamily dwellings. The application, as I said, it's proposing 23 dwelling units, and then with the existing 12-plex on the property, that's a total of 35 dwelling units on the 2.18 acres. And so that's a proposed density of approximately 16 dwelling units per acre. And just a note, as Tim mentioned earlier, that projects cannot be denied based solely on noncompliance with the growth policy. So the other requirements, water, wastewater, and solid waste. Again, I said this area will be served by Lolo Water and Sewer. We did receive comment from the Missoula County Public Works stating the property will have to petition to be included within that district and be required to obtain a capacity letter from the district engineer that it can be served. Access to the site, as I said, it would be developed with a new 60-foot wide approach off Farm Lane. It's about 50 feet between the two approaches, and that would create that looped system. And the internal road is proposed to be 20 feet in width. And we do have a proposed condition for a new approach permit from the county for accessing that secondary access. Emergency services, we did receive comment from Missoula Rural Fire requiring residential sprinkler systems be installed within the proposed structures in order to be compliant with fire code. And so we do have that condition, as well as a condition of approval requiring review of the access and parking by Missoula Rural Fire as well for compliance with their fire trucks. And then again, as I said, it's outside the FEMA mapped floodplain for compliance with floodplain regulations. So staff is recommending approval of the application. We've proposed 9 conditions of approval, and I have a proposed motion. I do know Sean from 406 Engineering is here if you guys have any questions. And I think there's a lot of public on the call as well.
Okay, thank you. Would the applicant or applicant's representative like to say anything? Sean? Anything? Nothing? Okay. Very good. Well, with that, we will open up the public hearing. Would folks who are here in the courthouse in the Sophie Moise room, is there anyone who would like to speak to this item? Come on up to the microphone. Yeah. Don't be shy. Is the light green at the base of the microphone?
Okay. Okay, it is.
All right, thank you. If you could state your name for the record and share with us.
I'm at 114 Lakeside Drive, which is property, a home due west of the proposed construction project. I've been involved in getting local homeowner input on the proposed project. And we had 83 people sign a petition opposing this project based on the fact of taking the existing 12-plex, figuring 2 vehicles per apartment. It'll take the vehicles from 24 up to 70. Right now, we have quite a problem of traffic on Farm and Lewis and Clark as it is. We have a lot of speeding, and we've had one lady say, my son was almost killed crossing Farm Lane. There are no crosswalks. There are 2 speed limit signs. The Sheriff's Department has been helpful in putting more patrols in there. But if we take the existing apartment, and a lot of the speeders come out of the apartment complex, we've got a young male type of individual with sports cars, and then they have other young males visiting them. So the overall vast majority of the people were objecting to the density of this project. And I know that you said that it doesn't apply in approving or disapproving, but then why would we have a 2002 plan if we're not going to go by it, or at least make it matter? So so we've got that factor, and I would say that was the biggest objection. Then we have also the fact that we're going to have the Lolo School starting up. And we've got a safety issue as it is right now. We do have kids walking up and down Farm Lane, Lewis and Clark, without sidewalks. So now we take and add in the additional vehicles from this apartment complex, and it's just going to aggravate the situation. We don't really have a solution other than to try to keep the density down to what the Lolo plan had stated. So that's one factor involved in it. The other factor is, and it wasn't mentioned in any of the paperwork that I know of, there were 44 911 calls to this existing property, the 12-plex, in the last 2 years. And so there's been a problem of alleged drug use, alcohol use, fighting, domestic fighting. And there is no plan that I can see for an on-site apartment manager to mitigate that problem for the future complex. It'll only get worse if everything is left as it is. That combined with the fact that we've got school kids going to be walking down that very sidewalk where the existing residents are speeding in and out of has a recipe for disaster. When I bought my property, I was given a declaration of covenants, conditions, and restrictions. And that provided for the fact that there'd be a committee that would have to approve any new additions of residential buildings in our Rosenjal Orchard tracts. And it described the fact that there would be single family townhouses or duplexes only built in addition. But if you drive around Lolo, and I did this just to make sure I was right, I could find no other apartment complex that's mixing with residential with a 15-foot setback. There is several apartment complexes, but they're set off by themselves, and they're designated apartments. I think that's probably the biggest issue that I've got personally with this, because you know, I've basically got property that's going to be devalued with this. I've got the safety issue with the kids, and I've got the property devaluation. And I also had a map that showed that my property line is a private road, and it is also a utility easement of 30 feet off my back property line. And it also has a covenant that anything in that easement has to be portable enough to be torn down if they have to go in and do something with the utilities. So a permanent structure 15 foot off my property line, I don't think is reasonable. It's not what I bought my property knowing about, and I'll put it that way. If there's been a change, I'm not aware of it. And I don't know if the law part of the county was aware of the covenants or not. I couldn't tell you. But I think it's something that we ought to look at.
Thank you.
Am I running out of time?
Yep, I think you're running a little bit long, so if you
Yeah,
could wrap
sorry.
up, that would be great.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, thank you very much. Additional comment, come on up. And if folks could try to keep their comments to 3 minutes or less, that would be fantastic. Thank you. No, that's okay.
That'll be easy for me. Bailey, thank you so much for the support you've given us. We've had a lot of questions about how to approach this, and Bailey has been very helpful. Bob and I put the petition together that you have in your paperwork, and we walked around that whole area and knocked on many, many, many doors and got universal agreement that the danger for the school children and for those of us who are community walkers with the addition of this density of population is really severe. We are now, that farm lane right now is doesn't have a lot of traffic. It's very noisy racing traffic, but there's not a lot of it. But if you add the school and directly across the street, this subdivision or this building complex, within a year of each other, it's going to dramatically change that traffic pattern. And we live in the county, you know, we aren't in the city, and our law enforcement comes from the sheriff's office, and we value it. We appreciate what they do for us. We appreciate their patrols, and we appreciate the response to us when we have problems. But nobody's going to be watching that traffic all the time unless something changes dramatically. I think I also had the question about the Lolo area being designated a 6 unit per acre in the growth policy, and this is going to be 16 units per acre. That's dramatic. And I understand it's not the deciding factor, but I would hope that it would be a factor that you would consider. And I think that's all I have to say. I think that's it. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Additional public comment here in the room. Come on up.
Hi, my name is Tim Cottarelli, and I live at 210 Lakeside Drive, which is just west of the subdivision is being proposed. And I guess a lot of it is property value that I'm concerned about, but being rentals, I'm not sure if they'll just end up being, you know, low income rentals where we'll have to deal with some more problems. The school's going in right across the street from the subdivision. And I think that, the density problem will be there also. I'm not really happy about the fact it's only 15 feet from my property, the nearest building. And we have not seen anything about off-street parking in this diagram here. We don't know if it's going to be 2-story buildings put up as the 12-plex is right now, or it's just going to be one floor. So I think those are questions that need to be answered for us. So, and obviously I am opposed to this building project here. So,
Thank you. Anyone else like to comment in the room? Come on up. You're just in time. We've been waiting for you.
I've been killing myself with coffee over at Liquid Planet. I live at 204 Lakeside Drive. And
can you state your name, please?
I'm sorry, Gary Irwin, G-A-R-Y-I-R-W-I-N. And we moved to Lolo because it was quiet and calm and a rational kind of place for old folks to live. And it's been quiet, but if we are going to see all of the new development, if it passes, and the experience we've had with the existing apartments behind us has been interesting. It hadn't been terrible, but it's been noisy and a lot of loose dogs and that sort of thing. And we would much prefer to see 2 houses put in that piece of property rather than all the apartments, and lose our view, which is immaterial for this speech, but that's our point. Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Is there anyone online or on the phone who would like to speak to this? If you're online via Microsoft.
Yes. Can you hear me?
Yeah, caller, if you could go ahead and introduce yourself, that would be great.
This is Jeff Griffin. I'm at 5590 Lonesome Dove, which is the property to the rear there where the access road is 3 feet from our vinyl fence there that you see. I echo the public comments so far by Bob and others. Extremely actually disappointed to see in the recommendations for conditional approval that there was no conditions to remedy the negative impacts that have been presented in the letters and affidavits on the quality of life with the current human population, because it is evident since, in such a small cluster of a neighborhood that so many people are pointing to the same potential negative impacts by the density. Again, back to the growth policy, 23 additional units in this space with cars and pets and other folks on the safety issues. We don't need to belabor that, but that is an issue for my wife and I as well. With that road being 3 feet from our, it's only a vinyl fence there. I'm really concerned about impaired driving and winter conditions in that area. And my bedroom's only feet from that road. As you can see, our yard's very small. In my letter, I asked for, if this were to go through as presented, that some bollards or some sort of barrier be put in for protection, because I really do not feel safe about that. I also do not feel comfortable with all the snow being piled up against our vinyl fence as well in that area, as you probably saw in our letter. That's a major issue. We're very concerned with privacy. We bought a home in Lolo to get out of the city per se, right, and still have a community feel. And that neighborhood has presented that to us up until this point. And we're mortified by this. And there aren't a lot of places to go, as you know, at this point in time. We joke that, maybe we'll have to move into one of these rentals if this comes through and sell our place, because I don't feel safe sleeping at the edge of that road. and my wife and I don't. So we strongly urge you to disapprove of it as presented. And again, in my letter, I stated if I owned a parcel of land, I would want to develop it as well. So I cannot blame the developers for wanting to do that. But how it's presented and a lack of communication at this point with the local neighborhood makes it so it's real difficult to swallow. I appreciate your time and your service to our community.
Thank you for your comments. Additional comment. Let's, before we go to any additional phone callers, is there anyone on Microsoft Teams who would like to speak? If so, please use the raise hand function. Anyone online? Any other phone callers? Please unmute yourself, hit *6 and introduce yourself. Okay. Seeing none, we'll close the public hearing and begin an opportunity for questions and discussion. Anything, Josh, to begin with? I got a few questions here, but
Sure.
go ahead.
Yeah, and I guess to speak with the developer's representative, Sean, thanks. Thanks for coming in, for waiting through the 7 previous hearings. So the gentleman who was just on the phone spoke compellingly about a concern for people driving around that loop. And he mentioned ballards. Is there something you could do to provide both enhanced privacy and protection in case somebody drives a little too fast around that corner?
So after we received the letters from the citizens, we did identify that could definitely be a problem. I've already talked to the developer, and we've already talked about putting in bollards.
Great.
It was a very, very valid point that I had a misstep in and didn't propose that in the initial one, and I should have. So that's where we're gonna do that. You could make it a condition if you guys wanted to. It's that important, I'd say. So.
Great, thanks.
So I guess to that point, before we move on, Bailey, how might we add that as a condition of approval?
I can try to come up with some language quickly.
Well,
I have a couple other questions, so if you could work on that.
Well, or to John Hart, I guess, it never works particularly well when we're just drafting stuff on the fly. Can we articulate the intent and have the final language forthcoming? Stump the deputy county attorney. Okay.
I think we probably can.
Because I have no idea in terms of number of bollards or location at this point, other than knowing that that is something that has been articulated by the public and that the developer recognizes is something that needs to be addressed.
Yeah, and it's always difficult because today's the day that we have to act on this application. We don't have another meeting before the statutory deadline comes and goes. And not only do we have to make a decision by April 27th, we have to issue a written, put that decision in writing by the 27th. So yeah, I'm not exactly sure on the fly here how to articulate from a safety and engineering standpoint, something that is appropriate.
Sean, have you given any thought to more specifics what this might look like on the ground?
I have not. I'm just thinking right now. I think I saw Eric Dixon on there. He may have some.
Yeah, that's good call. This is, he's a road engineer.
Eric, are you lurking out there, and would you like to take a stab at this?
Let's see. Yeah, I think Eric was on in case there were questions about the road RSID.
Ah, okay.
He's off.
So
yeah, go ahead.
So John, we have to have something finalized by April 27th.
April 27th is the deadline to have a written decision on the application.
Yeah.
So,
and mainly because next week's the second meeting in April is canceled and it can't make the April 28th meeting. This is the meeting.
Is there an administrative public meeting that would intervene that
Oh, I
could?
see Tim's got his hand up.
Tim Worley, come on up.
Sorry.
Tim Worley with CAPS. I'm seeing a best practice of bollards being 3 to 5 feet apart, although Nick's investigating to see if our Public Works manual might have some specs. But I think we can figure something out.
Should we put a pin in this momentarily while you're figuring that out and go on to your next question?
Thank you.
Okay, let's do that.
I'll draw it out. Give me.
Okay.
So I'm curious about parking for all the residents. Are you, please describe what you're planning.
So each unit will have its own garage.
Oh, okay. Didn't realize that.
So that'll give 2 parking spots per apartment.
Great. Thank you. And then snow stacking and privacy. What can we do for those 2 things?
I don't really know what to say about the privacy piece. I haven't really thought about that.
Maybe an 8-foot wooden fence or something.
Yeah,
There might be fence regulations.
Maybe, I don't know. I'm just riffing here, but
Right,
something along those lines.
I do know the developer wants this to be a nice place, and I feel like he's willing to work with people on things like this. If somebody has, you know, a problem, they could approach him and try to figure it out. I don't want to speak for him entirely with saying a fence will be put in or not. But he's an easy guy to get along with, and he's willing to help. So.
Bailey, I guess I don't want to interrupt your other work. Any thoughts on precedent for conditions of approval related to fencing? Or is that outside of the purview of what we have before us today?
So any conditions have to get tied back to those criteria, which are really specific. I will say, I mean, the property has some fencing around it that's pretty, normal 6 feet. And again, it's unzoned. So you'd be going, above and beyond what we what even our current zoning regulations have. 6 feet is pretty much. I think if it gets to 8 feet, it also needs a building permit as well.
Can we say 6 feet in solid material as opposed to 6 feet of chain link?
I mean, I think you can. It's just, you just got to tie it back to, it has to be mitigating impacts that are specific to those things, which I do think there's a lot of comment to do that. The other thing, like landscaping, there's things like that we can do. It's just harder because the conditions, when we write them, they have to be pretty specific because it's unzoned. So we have nothing else to go on other than what comes in. So if you want to do fencing, landscape, anything like that, we have to be very kind of specific of what we're going
Could
forward.
we say 6 feet of solid fencing?
Mhm.
Sean, what are your thoughts there? And I don't know what is on the ground there today, whether it's solid vinyl fencing or something else. Could you come on up and then please describe what sort of fence you have? And please state your name again.
I didn't give you my name. It's Kathy Koska, and I live at 230 Lakeside. I have a 6-foot wood solid, what's that called, Bob? Kind of solid wood fence at the back of my property. The neighbors to my north, I guess, have a chain link fence. To the south, have a vinyl fence. What's your fence, Bob?
Sir, we need to get you on the microphone here. Yes, please.
Bob Ensminger, 114 Lakeside. And up till now, all the local residential surrounding houses have put their own fences up. Or in my case, I didn't put one up, I put trees. The one apartment fence that there is now is on the frontage of Farm Lane. And that is plastic and it's not solid. And then on the backside of that lot, there is a plastic fence that the apartment complex has that separates the 2 lots.
Okay, there we're looking at some of the
I was throwing up for my state
Fencing.
visit, if
Yes.
that kind of helps. So this is this white one that's right here in the front, that's along Farm Lane. And then these would be the fences that they're talking about along, I think Lakeside Drive there. And then way back here, this is I can't remember what street that's back there,
Okay.
but,
That's
but
where
that's,
the
that's the
loop-
back of the property. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
If my fence is going to be part of the required fencing for this property, could you stain it for me?
Okay, thank you. Come on up.
My name's Holly Kerner, and the fencing that we have right now is a 4-foot open fencing. It's not even a solid fencing. And the woman that is directly next door to us, she has chain link. So, I mean, we've already talked about that's an expense that we're going to have to put that on us. If we want privacy now, we're going to have to put up a solid fence. The man that is directly across from us on the other side of this lot, he's already gone out, and he had also had a 4-foot fence. He's already gone out and extended his up to 7 or 8 feet. Is it 8 feet? Yeah. So, you know, the privacy that we have now, even with that chain link, with that open fencing that we have, it's going to be gone unless we put out the expense of putting up a 6 to 8 foot fence. We'll have no privacy in our backyard. We're not going to be able to sit on our deck and enjoy our backyard because we're going to have an apartment building right smack dab behind us. So, you know, none of this makes any of us very happy. So I'll sit down.
No, thank you. And I hope folks recognize that part of what we are saddled with is lack of zoning and some fairly tight parameters, decision space dealt to us by the state legislature. Go ahead. Yeah, Josh, go ahead.
And what we were just talking about, what was the first lady's? Sorry, forgot your name. The woman who was just speaking. Holly. So I just wanted to point out, Holly, what we were just talking about was conditioning this on having the developer build the fence, build a 6-foot private fence, not asking the nearby residents to do what they would like, but conditioning this on the developer building a private fence. The other thing I just wanted to point out, I mean, looking at that picture that Bailey had up, I can see this is an open field, an open space across the road from another big open space. It would be a very pleasant place to live. Quiet, calm, beautiful, ideal, wonderful spot to live. Obvious when you look at it. And we're talking about unzoned land, and we're also in a moment where we have less than 0.5% of rental vacancy in our community. There is quite literally no place for anybody to live, and anybody means the people who teach at our schools and our sheriff's deputies and pour coffee and everything in between. And it puts us all in a terrible spot. I'm not asking for empathy for me and Dave and Juan, just all of us in a terrible spot, because no one who lives next to an empty field would want an apartment building next to them. Nobody. What you guys are expressing, entirely rational. I totally get it. And at the same time, this is unzoned land, and we need apartments and we need housing. It's just the world that we live in at the moment. Just had to call it out.
I'm going to give just a little bit of grace today. Typically, we only allow one comment per person, but we'll give you one small bite at the apple again. Come on up.
2 questions and 1 comment to what you just said, Mr. Slatnick. My comment is, at the sacrifice of safety, I question that. I understand the need for housing, but we're talking about a school, an elementary school. Okay, my comments are that the parking may be available to the residents, but those residents are going to have guests, and there is no place to park. They park in the church parking lot right now frequently. The streets are not equipped to have that much parking. And so that is a problem. And then the other issue I have, I guess this is kind of a question, this feels very rushed. You know, first of all, we had difficulty with the original application. We were delayed by 4 days. We did our level best to get this all put together. And now you're telling us you have this deadline, and I don't feel like it's fair to those of us who are being so heavily impacted by this. Okay, I'm done.
Thank you. And we will not dispute that at times we feel like we're at the very tail end of the process with little time to deliberate. That's the hand that's been dealt to us by the state legislature. So we have zero discretion or wiggle room there. Josh?
So on the safety piece, a very valid concern. I do want to point out that sidewalks are going in. Sidewalks will be, as Shane Stack described to us the other day, along where the school is, there will be a sidewalk. Not that meets all the concerns about traffic, but I did want to point out that a sidewalk's being constructed. Great point on where a guest's going to park. Where are guests going to park?
Sean.
I'll just be honest with you, I haven't thought about that. We're working under the assumption that there'll be 2 cars per unit.
So there's no on-street parking.
No.
No.
None proposed.
Okay. Thank you. Thanks. Yes, sir. And if you could state your name again, that would be
Bob
great.
Insminger. And thanks for the other bite. It looks like this is going forward. I can tell you that if the road was put on the outside boundary and the apartment moved in, it would probably be more palatable to not have a building 20 or, 15 foot off our property line. There'd be a road there, 30-foot road. And my covenants show that that was a road to begin with. So that one point, at the last I heard, the fire chief said he couldn't make that Shepherd's Crook at the end with his biggest fire truck anyway, that he couldn't fight a fire. We have had a fire in there too. And the last thing I was going to point out was, I forgot it, but a way to make it more palatable. I don't know who we're talking about, who we could talk
Sean?
about that.
Sorry. Yeah, sir, if I didn't catch that last part. If you could just speak into the microphone a little.
As far as mentioned that the owner is amenable to this kind of discussion, that's encouraging. So I don't know, maybe we can get together after.
Yes.
Thanks.
So
this is Jeff Griffin again. Can you?
I'm sorry. No, thank you, sir. Another option. Let me just throw this out here. Sean, come on up. And I don't know if you're in contact with the property owner or not, whether there would be any opportunity to grant an extension, because there are a few things that we're discussing here that would probably benefit from a little more discussion rather than just trying to wing this today.
I could talk to him right after this and get back to Bailey.
I think you need to talk to him like right now.
Commissioners?
Yes. Who is this?
Hi, this is Jeff Griffin again. I just needed to chime in since everyone else in person's got a bite of the apple. I need to
Okay.
get mine. And it seems like the common theme here on every question is I haven't thought about it. So I would think that most things would have been thought about before it came before you today, especially with these major concerns. So I just wanted to make that point that it seems like there does need to be some more thought put into this development before you guys make a decision.
So
Thank
how
you.
about this? Why don't we take a 5-minute recess here, and let's make it an 8-minute, 10-minute, the top of the hour. And Sean, if you want to see if you can get a hold of someone in the know, and let's reconvene at 4 p.m. and see where we are.
Good.
Thank you.
3.
Okay, folks, let's reconvene. Come back into session. Sean, is there anything that you'd like to share with us?
We'd like to make a decision today.
Okay. There we have it. So I guess we will forge ahead. I mean, it is unfortunate.
Way to reconsider there.
I mean,
you want the decision to go your way, no doubt, right?
Okay.
Of course.
And
There's concerns that too many conditions will get added. That's the concern. When we don't necessarily feel like it's totally reasonable with it being unzoned. That's his concern.
okay.
So how, oh, I'm sorry.
Well, I will just say it again. I mentioned this at our meeting the other day. I am a bit disappointed with the level or lack thereof of public engagement on this, and I recognize that the lack of zoning here creates a circumstance that, and just by virtue of the buildings for lease or rent regulations and state statute, does not necessarily require you to do certain things. I think as we've seen in this project and others, the reason we have kind of unanimous opposition from the community is that there was not as robust of engagement with the community prior to today. And so we're dealing with things like maybe the developer is amenable to bollards, but that could have been dealt with way earlier than today rather than the position that we're in. So Josh.
Oh, man, this is really tough. I'm sorry with names. You brought up a great point about where a guest's going to park. Excellent point. And the answer, we haven't thought about it. That's not a satisfactory answer. And I personally would, just speaking for myself, would love to have heard you say, you know, we're going to put this off for a little while. We're going to figure out how we accommodate guests. We're going to figure out how we accommodate privacy in the bollards and come back and kind of make this right. I feel deeply around the need for housing. We have to address that. And for as many folks as signed this, and I totally get why you would. If I lived where you would, I would do the same. Absolutely. There are 4 times as many people that are going to scream at us for stopping housing when we need housing. Like more people would want this than don't want it, except for the people that live nearby. And I think if you guys were really going to do right, you would figure out the privacy, the parking, and the safety issue around, and then it goes through, right? Then we move on. We come up with a way to make it work and move on. But as it is right now, with no place for guests to park, I don't know what the answer is. And I realize that's putting me at political risk because way more people are going to say we need housing than the folks who are living nearby. So quick, come up with an answer and we can make this go.
We can absolutely look, can you bring up the site plan, Bailey? We left a substantial amount of space as open space for kids to play.
We might need, there's going to be a playground across the street at the school. So that might be, you might be able to sacrifice that.
Right. I do recognize that we didn't really look into that too much. But I'm not going to sit here and lie to you guys, tell you something. But I think we can make something work. We can figure something out. As a show, there is ample space up there.
Where are you thinking we could?
It would be to the side of the existing covered store parking. So that hatching there that says
open space play area.
Yeah. To the left, yes.
Oh, right here.
Right here.
Open
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
We can make a little parking area there.
Bailey, did you have something you wanted to add here?
Oh, I was just going to add that over the break, Tim, Nick, and I came up with 2 conditions that we could talk about. One is bollards and one is about fencing as well. So we do have a couple things that we can, I know that's not everything, but I wanted you guys to know that we've been coming up with some stuff.
Sure. Well, let's come back to that in a second and continue on with the parking piece just a bit longer.
Yeah. So you think you could make a small parking area there that would accommodate visitors?
I think we have the space to do that. Yes.
And so again, I guess the challenge with doing this on the fly is the best that we could do would be to create a condition that would require some amount of overflow parking in what is now designated as the open space play area, recognizing, as Commissioner Slotnick pointed out, there will be a playground obviously across the street at the school, but that would be at least an option. Tim.
Yeah, I wanted to speak to the parking issue. I believe our zoning prescribes 2 parking spaces per unit in multi-dwelling situations. Bailey or Nick, please correct me if I'm wrong. That doesn't ensure that every last guest is going to find a great parking space, but just trying to think in terms of the zoned area, what would be required. If this location were zoned, I think 2 spaces would be the standard. That's not to say that What you recognize here today is something that needs to be mitigated. If you believe that more parking needs to be added, I think if we have good findings on the record, we can go that direction, but our best reference point really is our zoning code. So
In other areas, there might be on-street parking, and given that this isn't in a neighborhood grid, there would be no, within this little development here, there would be no opportunity for on-street parking.
Right. Contextually, maybe more is needed here.
Yeah.
Bailey, do you have any thoughts on this?
Oh, I was just gonna, I was looking up the zoning regulations and it is so multifamily, 3-bedroom or 3 or more bedrooms, which I believe is what this was, I feel like. And 3-bedroom would be, under standard zoning, would be 2 spaces per dwelling unit. Just, that's all I was gonna add.
And how many spaces are currently available per dwelling unit? 2?
They're proposing.
There
2.
are 2.
Yeah, and that's in the application as well.
And it's like what Tim said, contextually, this may not be appropriate, given if this was a more traditional urban road grid, there would be places for people for on-street parking, but there literally is no, if one guest car comes, there's no place for that person to park.
And I was trying to draft like a potential condition for that. I guess my only question, and I'm not sure about this answer, is like how many extra spaces are needed? Like we can say an area for overflow parking shall be created on the property. You know what I mean? We can make a condition, but it's, again, because these are super specific regulations, it has to be in the condition. It's like, is 5 enough? Is 10? I don't know what that number is. That would be the only thing. I'll keep looking though in the breaks.
So we're looking at an additional 23 units. Is that correct? Sean, would you have any thoughts as far as what you might be willing to, or again, you're having to channel the mind of the applicant here, but what might be a reasonable number of additional kind of overflow parking? Yeah, well, that's part of it, is what physically could fit in that section of ground there, and then working back from that. And I'm no engineer, so there's no way that I can on the fly determine what's possible or desirable there.
If we were to keep some open space, I feel like as Tim stated, we're at the 2 per dwelling, 2 spots per dwelling unit.
But you are, but I think there's recognition that if everyone is maxed out at the 2 per, there's really no place for any.
One guest.
Just because there's no on-street parking, the context of this particular development is such that it's pretty limiting.
Looking at that, I feel like you could probably fit 5 to 8 cars comfortably and still have some space, some open space there.
All right, let's go with 8.
So what would we, is there, as far as building the parking lot component, what's the additional review steps coming down the pike? Would there be engineering, building permit review or some?
Yes, to those. So yes, so one of the conditions I have proposed is they have to do the grading and drainage plan, so stormwater review basically for the site. Obviously, any impervious area would have to be calculated within that. So that's where the size of the parking lot could definitely be, help or hinder the availability for stormwater on the property. And then, so they have to meet these conditions and we would review that at the time of building permit approval. So they do have to get building permits for all 3 of these. And so we review the conditions of approval at that time.
Were you guys having some thoughts there? Tim?
This might be one for Sean, but just trying to imagine what the depth of parking spaces could potentially be in that north east corner, because they need to really be about 18 and a half feet deep. I don't know, Bailey, can you tell on that site plan how much
It's
depth? you got there?
37, so right
Oh,
here, it's
okay.
37 feet is here, yeah, because our requirement is they have to be 9, or I should say, using zoning, it's not zoned, but using zoning as a guide. Our parking requirements are 9 feet wide by 18 and a half feet long. So they would be able to fit within this area. It's more of just the number, like how many could fit in that. And I don't have, it's 143 from here to here, but there's no measurement from, in this area. So I don't know that total
So could you
number.
fit 8 in there?
It probably, I mean, I was just using like the driveways, and I think you could probably fit about 8 at least. It should. I mean, I'm terrible at math off the top of my head.
Can I speak? I'm on.
Who am I
Zoom.
hearing from here?
Yeah, this is Jacob Zimmerman. I work with Sean at 406.
Yeah,
The
go ahead, Jacob.
dimension that you just requested, that's a little bit longer than 143 feet. The hashed area that we have is 166 feet long from the northern fence to the southern edge of that hashed area.
Okay, so I guess just to put it in simple terms for us, would 8 parking spots fit within there?
So doing 166 would be at 9 feet wide would be 18.4.
Great.
But that's all the way to the property line. I mean,
Right,
obviously
right.
we wouldn't want to go that far. But.
Okay, thank you, Jacob. Come on back up for one little more nibble. And if you could state your name for the record again.
For the record, Bob Ensminger. The application that I saw from PLK stated that the garbage cans for each apartment complex would be placed in a garage underneath the apartment. So there is not 2 vehicle parking per se under the existing plan, as far as I know.
One is inside and one is outside.
Okay, so
Single car garage.
yes, but a garbage can in the garage takes up a parking spot.
Hopefully they're not that big of garbage cans, are they? Sean?
These are the forklift or the garbage truck. They're like 10-foot wide for the 12-plex. That's the one that's out there now, and it's overflowing. It's not adequate.
Okay, thank you, sir. Sean, could you speak to this? Are we talking the garbage cans for each unit are required to be in the garage?
Yeah, we're proposing the typical rollout ones, not
dumpsters.
Not big
Right.
dumpsters.
So presumably you could, as with most garages, you could have a vehicle and your garbage can. Okay, thank you. Okay, so we're back to sorry, what was that?
I looked like Bailey was doing.
Oh. So I guess back to the parking issue while Bailey is madly writing some ideas down. Would 10 parking spots be acceptable? John?
To Bailey's point, we do have to store the stormwater somewhere.
Could I guess here's an idea. Could it be such that could we write the condition such that it would recognizing that stormwater review will still need to happen if we find out in that process that something that we're conditioning today is not workable. I mean, it's subject to approval of the county engineer or some such thing.
Yeah, we haven't ever had a buildings release come back for a modified condition of approval, like we would see for like a subdivision or something like that. I would imagine it would go through the same process as, just like with a subdivision condition of approval, we run it back through kind of a modified version of subdivision review, comes to public hearing and things like that. There's nothing specific in the BFLR regulations, but that would be my first take is if a condition can't be met, that they would have to come back and have it reviewed again. Probably not the full review like we would do on this, but just making sure, you know, that any modified condition is still mitigating the review criteria.
Okay. So presumably, again, if during that subsequent review, it's determined that to accommodate stormwater runoff or drainage, you could not have 10 spots, we would be.
You again.
Yeah.
That's, I could agree with that.
Okay. Yeah, there's no desire to cause you to do something that is not feasible.
Right. I appreciate that.
Bailey, are you ready with any of the conditions?
I've got a couple. I know Tim has the one about the bollard, so I have a couple. Okay. And I was thinking, I was like, I could take my PowerPoint down and type them on the PowerPoint if that would be better or easier for you guys to see them.
Sure. Let's
okay.
Let's do that. Is there anything else we want to talk about, I guess, before we move on? Well, I guess I will just add some commentary here. There is no doubt this is going to change the character and nature of this microphone problems. It will change.
We're out of microphones. Oh, this one just came back on.
Okay, I'll talk over here. So let the record note, I'm having microphone difficulties in the transcript. So without a doubt, what happens here will change what is on the ground today and will change the look and feel and character of the neighborhood. I think back to 22 years ago when my wife and I purchased our first home, and a few years after that, our next door neighbor, classic backyard scenario, our next door neighbor decided to put in a house and ended up completely blocking the amount of sun that we previously got in the backyard for gardening. And also they have a lovely deck that now overlooks our backyard. So it absolutely changed the way in which we use our property. This predated my understanding or much of an understanding of zoning. And in my case, it actually was zoned and allowed the neighbor to do what they ended up doing. In other cases, like I mentioned, the lack of zoning, as much as we hate regulation in the state of Montana, there are times when it certainly comes in handy because it helps determine the kind of the regulatory framework of what can happen on the ground. And I think that's part of what's playing out here. But what we're also trying to do is, to the extent possible, address some of and mitigate some of the very real and very legitimate concerns that the neighbors have brought up. Bailey, have I stalled long enough? Okay.
I'm just making the font bigger so that you guys can read it here.
Hate that.
Yeah, I know it's like really tiny on the screen. Okay. Oh, come on. Talk about on the fly, right?
Jacob, is your hand still up from previously?
Yeah, I'll take that down.
Okay, thank you.
I just gotta share my screen now. Okay, so here, these are the three kind of conditions that we came up, and I'll read them for people as well. But first, a solid 6-foot fence shall be constructed along the western, northern, and eastern property boundaries. We left off the front because typically we don't allow fences in the front setback anyways. An area for 10 overflow parking spaces shall be constructed on the subject property. Bollards shall be installed along the northern property boundary for the internal depth of the road, so basically the length of the road at that end. And then spacing and material shall be according to accepted engineering standards, subject to review and approval by Missoula County Public Works Department.
Great work,
Ba-
Bailey.
Bailey, as far as the first condition of approval, I can imagine that there are, what if one of the current property owners already has a fence and doesn't want it messed with? Or,
To be clear, they wouldn't be paying for this.
no, absolutely, but I would hate to require the property owner to do something to replace the fence of someone who already has one, if they are okay with the current level of privacy.
Might just be fence to fence.
Well, and that's the thing I'm not sure about how, 'cause I mean, generally, like in our office, we recommend people don't put fences directly on the property line for issues like that. I also wouldn't necessarily want like one owner tying into another owner's fence. That could cause it. So, I mean, in my mind, I would think they would be pretty darn close, but maybe not touching. But again, I'm not a structural engineer that deals with fences, so I wasn't sure. That's kind of why I left it slightly vague, that just we wanted a solid 6-foot fence along the property lines. But it's up to change if you guys would like to change something.
Sean, do you want to, let's just take these one at a time here. Do you want to speak to the fence issue?
I mean, to be honest, I don't agree with it. For the reasons you guys were just talking about. I don't know how it's going to provide an immense amount of privacy from everybody. The things are 2 stories. I feel like the 20-foot buffer that we proposed for the building setbacks is more than adequate. As we talked about before, there's no requirement for that. We could have built right next to it. I feel like having to put in a solid 6-foot fence all the way around it is going to cause more problems than good it's going to do. I don't know. How do you guys feel about this? Because
I'd never be able to save that fence, and I don't think.
Do you want to come on up just so we get all this on the record here?
Kathy Casca, I would never be able to maintain my fence if there were another, and it's wood, so it needs to be stained every year. So that would definitely kind of impede my rights, I think, to my fence.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you. So there are some unintended consequences. Come on up. And sir, if you could state your name
For
again.
Bob Ensminger, sorry.
That's right.
I think there'd be several residents that would jump at the chance to have a 6-foot fence. And the ones that have existing fences, the one gentleman that just raised his fence from 6 foot to 8 foot, he'd probably leave it alone. So if it was left up to each place, it probably wouldn't be that big of a project. And it would probably go a long ways towards mitigating. A 20-foot setback is good, but then you've got a patio on the apartment that is within what, 10 foot of or 5 foot? Yeah, so, and I've watched the renters puking off the rail of the existing apartments from partying. So I've got, that I'm facing. So a fence would go a long ways towards me.
Thank you. Josh?
I'd like to keep the fence in there and let's figure it out.
Okay. Overflow parking. Let's talk about that. Sean, is this going to be workable, recognizing that if due to stormwater analysis, it's determined that it's not feasible, so we'll have to take another look at it?
it depends if we can use sumps or not. I did see that the Water Quality District did say there is potential high groundwater. If we weren't able to use sumps due to high groundwater, it could be an issue. Could be. If we'd have to retain a 100-year storm, we would have to use all that open space. Or close to. I shouldn't say all of it. I haven't done the calcs on it, but it'll be a substantial pond. Excuse me.
Okay. Josh?
So, Bailey, if say these guys did the research on stormwater and turns out, they need all that space, what do we do then in terms of review? How do we figure out how to accommodate guest parking?
Well, then if this is a condition of approval, in order to take that off or modify it, that's
Right.
where they would have to come back and they'd have to show
How they're gonna do it.
how, yeah, how or why or, you know.
Okay. Great, thanks.
My
What-
gut tells me that there's adequate space for sumps. But I don't know for sure. I haven't looked.
Going back to the fence thing, one more time. So the scenario that the one individual mentioned where maybe someone's okay with their fence as it is and are concerned that if another fence is built close enough to it that it would eliminate the ability for them to maintain that fence. And it would be kind of fence redundancy at that point. Thoughts?
I'm just gonna fall back and they're gonna have to figure it out. Like, oh, the two fences aren't gonna kiss each other. There's gonna be some space in between. Maybe somebody's gonna have to make a gate so they can get, no rights to your fence will be eliminated. You will be allowed to get to your fence. You guys are just gonna have to figure it out.
Bailey?
I don't have any other, I don't have any great ideas either, so at this point,
I think they'll be able to figure it out.
that's I guess my hope, fingers crossed as well, so.
Okay. And the bollards. Oh, Sean, did you have something on that before we left that topic?
I'm thinking about how do these conditions come into effect?
So if they basically have to be implemented or shown that they've met the condition in order for you to get your building permit.
Building permit,
Mhm.
okay. Fear with the fence would be that we couldn't come to something where, say, a neighbor held out and said, no, absolutely not, don't touch it. I guess we could put it on our side of the property. That was a kind of a concern of mine, but I think we can figure it out.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's Sean's point is like, so they have this condition imposed. And if something, I guess it, like you said, you'd have to figure it out because if there is a property owner that says, no, I don't want a fence right here. I don't want one on the back. I mean, they have to meet this condition. So they would have to.
They put it on their property line.
Mhm.
On
But
their
then does
front-
it
their
get tied into the other? I mean, that's where it could get kind of weird. I don't know.
I'd end up with a no person's land between two fences, but there'll be one contiguous fence around three sides of the development.
I mean,
And that-
would it be too funky to have in here language that would give some veto power for an individual property owner that they don't?
I wouldn't want to put that in as a condition. I mean, a condition of approval is supposed to be, it's mitigating an impact. It's very specific. And I mean, it's just, they have to meet the condition of approval.
Okay.
Commissioners, Jeff Griffin here again at 5590 Lonesome Dove. The interior fence is of interest to our property, specifically in regards to another barrier outside the bollards and also for snow removal keep on the apartment side. My fear was that it was all going to be pushed up against the fence, causing structural issues with our current fence there, and then also, runoff from that snow. So in full approval there. And in comment to 406 engineering staff member about the setback, that's appreciated. But also you would have to consider mitigating negative impacts on the human population at that point, even more so than as presented if that setback wasn't put in. So it's appreciated, but I don't know that it's as cut and dry as saying that, hey, we're good guys, we're actually doing this for the neighbors already. I don't believe that. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. How about the bollards? Any thoughts there, Sean, as far as written on the screen? And for those on the phone who might not be seeing this, the condition is bollards shall be installed along the northern property boundary for the internal depth of the road. Spacing and material shall be according to accepted engineering standards, subject to review and approval by the Missoula County Public Works Department.
think that's perfect.
Okay.
And I would say, we just wanted it, not the whole length of the northern property line. That's why we put the internal depth of the road, so just where the road is. I was just making that clear. That was the intent that what we were writing.
Did we get any comment from the rural fire district?
We did, and that's the conditions that I have a couple of them that they have to review the road. So I know earlier it was the question about the width of the road, and Pete's Giardino's one of the fire inspectors for Missoula Rural. He's concerned with the radius of the road, not the overall width, which is the different radius versus width. But that is, all of their comments are actually conditioned in my report.
Okay, thank you. Something else was brought up earlier about covenants. Is this parcel part of another existing subdivision that would somehow be subject to those covenants?
I could not find any. I was doing searching while everybody was talking and I could not find any. I am not the end all person, that sometimes the clerk and recorder's office can find things that we can't see on there, but I could not find any on, I don't know if 406 or the applicant has done any further research.
I haven't found any either. But I do feel like, correct me if I'm wrong, but covenants are more of a private matter.
Well, it is the case that we would not be enforcing private covenants as Missoula County.
And I will say the comment that was brought up, so this is a different property. It's not part of that subdivision. The one landowner that brought it up, it's a different legal description and everything. So
Yeah,
we'll say it would be.
I guess I was wondering if what we're doing today is looking at a property that was previously subdivided that has conditions or covenants associated with it. Okay. Anything else? So I hope folks appreciate we're doing the best that we can to try to add some mitigations to what are some very real and valid impacts that folks have identified. So I guess procedurally, you want to bring back up the motion language, and we are assuming that you'll just number these sequentially, these additional conditions of approval?
Yeah, it would end up being a total of 12 then with those other 3.
Okay, so would the same motion language work here subject to the recommended conditions of approval?
I would say the amended recommended conditions of approval. I wonder if I can change it on the fly.
I got it right here. Good. Are you ready for?
Yeah, let's go for it.
Okay, I would move, we request the board approve buildings for lease or rent project at 5470 Farm Lane based on the findings of fact and the conclusions of law, subject to the amended recommended conditions of approval found in the staff report.
I'll second that. Any further discussion or comments? Okay. And again, I would reiterate, anyone out there in the world of engineering, please do what you can to engage the neighbors early, lest we find ourselves doing what we're doing today kind of on the fly. Sean?
Can I speak to that?
Yes.
quickly? I honestly did not expect this much pushback. Not even remotely this much. If I'd have known this was going to happen, we would have done some public outreach. I mean, typically we get 1 or 2 letters on major subdivisions in the city. So I was slightly taken back about it. So if I knew this was going to be there, there would have been steps taken.
At this moment, I'd like to quote the great sage of development, Paul Forsting. Paul said in this space, everyone says we need housing, no one wants it next to them. And he was right. It's true. Wherever there is an open field within our urban-ish areas and there's access to services, it's going to be built on. And for the folks who live nearby, it will be crummy. I live across the street from an open field. It's beautiful. I have an incredible view to the north. Someday it's going to be gone.
And zoning's important. And until that happens in areas that are unzoned in Missoula County, there is still some cloud of uncertainty. All right, let's go ahead and vote. All in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Okay, thanks everyone who joined us in person and also online today, and for sticking with us, and for staff doing their work on the fly.
Gosh, I was just gonna say thanks so much to Bailey and to Tim and to Nick and John for figuring this out. Thank you.
Any other business come to us today? Seeing none, we'll be adjourned.